I still remember the exact moment everything changed. Not the big moments, not the wedding, not the move, not the first holiday where her chair sat empty at my table. No, it was something smaller than all of that, something I almost missed. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October. The kind of day where the light comes in sideways through bare tree branches and the whole world looks like it's holding its breath. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, scrolling through my phone without really seeing anything. And then her name lit up my screen. My daughter, Maya. I sat up straight. She never called on Tuesdays. I answered on the second ring, my heart already doing that thing it does whenever I hear her voice, that strange mix of love and longing that doesn't ever fully go away, no matter how old they get, no matter how far they move. She sounded bright, cheerful, happy in a way that I hadn't heard from her in a while. She said, "Mom, I just wanted to tell you something. I had the most amazing conversation with Sandra today." Sandra, her stepmother. She kept talking about some advice Sandra had given her, something about career paths and being brave and following what lights you up inside. And then she said the words, the ones that sat down inside my chest and haven't left since. I just feel so lucky, Mom. Sandra has really shaped who I am. I honestly don't know where I'd be without her. There was a silence then, my silence. And I filled it the way I always do, with grace I didn't entirely feel, with warmth that cost me something. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said. "I'm so glad you have her." And I was. I am. That's the part nobody understands. You can be glad for your child and heartbroken for yourself at the exact same moment, and both of those things can be completely true. I set the phone down after we hung up, and I sat there in that quiet kitchen, in that sideways October light, and I thought, who am I in my own daughter's story? My name is Diane. I'm 61 years old. I live in a small house in Ohio, the same state where I was born, raised, and where I raised my own children. The house isn't fancy, it never was. But it's mine. I've got a vegetable garden that gets a little more ambitious every spring. A dog named Biscuit who follows me from room to room like a slow golden shadow. And a life that looks perfectly fine from the outside. From the outside. Inside, I'm a woman still learning how to understand what happened to her family. Still learning how to hold the love she has for her children without needing it to come back to her in a particular shape. I was married for 22 years. His name was Robert. We were not a dramatic couple. There were no screaming fights, no betrayal in the way people imagine. We were just two people who slowly, quietly grew apart the way wood warps in the heat, so gradually you don't notice until the door won't close anymore. When we divorced, Maya was 19 and my son, Tyler, was 17. Old enough to understand, young enough to still be shaped by it. The divorce was civil. Robert and I were both committed to being decent, but decent doesn't protect you from the slow drift that comes after. He moved about 40 minutes away. He met Sandra 2 years later. She was 53, refined, successful in a way that was visible, the kind of home where every room looks like a magazine spread, the kind of woman who always knows the right wine to bring to a dinner party. She was not a villain. I want to be clear about that. She was kind to my children. She loved them in her way. But she also had things I didn't have. And for a long time, I told myself that didn't matter. It mattered. Let me take you back to when it was just us. Maya at 7, sitting at the kitchen counter on a Saturday morning while I made pancakes from scratch. She had a gap where her front tooth used to be, and she kept running her tongue over it the way kids do when something new is happening in their bodies. I'd put chocolate chips in the batter. I still remember the way her face lit up when she saw them melting into little dark pools. "Mama," she said, she still called me Mama then, "when I'm big, can we still make pancakes?" Every single Saturday, I told her. I meant it. I was the one who drove her to swim lessons every Thursday for 3 years, the one who sat in those muggy natatoriums smelling of chlorine and rang the little handbell we bought at a craft fair whenever she made it across the pool without stopping. I was the one who sat on the bathroom floor with her at 2 in the morning when she had her appendix out at 15, holding a cold cloth to her forehead. I was the one who read her college essays and cried at the kitchen table after she drove away for freshman year. I was the one who did the invisible work, the kind of work that doesn't have receipts or photographs, the kind that soaks into a child so deeply they don't even know it's there. They just call it themselves. I am not telling you this to make myself a martyr. Every mother does this. That's the point. We do all of it without any expectation of credit because love isn't supposed to be a ledger. But somewhere along the way, I learned that invisible work can become invisible entirely. After the divorce, things shifted slowly. So slowly I almost didn't feel it at first. Robert bought a beautiful home on the other side of the city, something I could never have afforded on my teacher's salary. Sandra had good taste and the resources to express it. Their house had a chef's kitchen and a finished basement and a guest suite that felt like a boutique hotel. The kind of place that makes 22-year-olds who are still figuring out who they are feel like they've stepped into a better version of possibility. I'm not proud of how much that hurt, but it did. Maya started spending more time over there. Tyler, too, for a while, though he was more balanced about it, more rooted in a way that I was grateful for and didn't fully understand. But Maya was always the one who was drawn to beautiful things. She always wanted to learn how to hold a dinner party, how to match fabrics, how to move through the world with a certain kind of ease. And Sandra could teach her that. I told myself it was fine. I told myself this is what good divorce looks like. Your kids build relationships with both families, they get loved from multiple directions, and you put your ego on a shelf and you're grateful. So I did that. I was grateful. Loudly, consciously, daily grateful. But quietly, in the early mornings when I was watering my garden and the house was too silent, a small and persistent sadness lived in me. The kind you don't talk about because it sounds too petty, too small, too much like jealousy when you try to put it into words. I wasn't jealous of Sandra. Not exactly. I was grieving something. I just didn't know how to name it yet. The first time I really noticed the shift was at Maya's 25th birthday dinner. She hosted it herself, her apartment, which she decorated beautifully with touches that I recognized as Sandra's influence. Linen napkins, tapered candles, and actual cheese board with little handwritten labels. I arrived with a lemon layer cake I'd made from scratch using the recipe my own mother had given me. It was the same cake we'd had at every one of Maya's birthdays since she was old enough to request flavors. Sandra arrived with a bottle of champagne and a wrapped box from a jewelry store. The kind of store that has one of those quiet, hushed interiors where you feel like you should whisper. When Maya opened it, she gasped. It was a delicate gold bracelet with a tiny diamond. She put it on immediately, held out her wrist, and said, "Sandra, oh my God, you always know exactly what I want." I watched from across the room, holding my coffee mug with both hands. She did thank me for the cake. She hugged me and said it looked beautiful. And later, she had 2 slices. But the moment, that charged, joyful, seen moment, belonged to someone else. I drove home that night in the dark, and I sat in my driveway for a long time before going inside. Biscuit was waiting at the door, wagging his whole body the way he does, and I knelt down and buried my face in his warm fur, and I let myself feel it. The thing I'd been carefully not feeling for a long time. Not anger, not resentment, just a deep, hollow ache. I thought I made that girl. I held her through every dark night and every bright morning. I poured myself into her for 25 years, and I am the one standing on the edge of her life looking in. And then I felt guilty for thinking it, because what kind of mother keeps score? The months that followed, were a kind of low-grade quiet pain that I got very good at managing. I kept busy. I taught fourth grade, I'd been doing it for over 30 years, and I loved my students, loved the honest chaos of small people learning the world. I had friends, good ones. My neighbor Carolyn and I walked 3 miles every morning, rain or shine, talking about everything and nothing. My sister Linda drove up from Columbus once a month, and we'd cook together and watch old movies and not worry about being impressive. My life was full, I knew this. I reminded myself constantly. But there's a particular loneliness in feeling peripheral to your own child's life. It doesn't announce itself dramatically. It arrives in small moments, when Maya texts a photo of something exciting to a group chat, and Sandra responds first with heart emojis. When Tyler mentions that Maya spent Easter at their father's house 3 years in a row. When the holidays start to feel like negotiations rather than gatherings. Christmas of last year was the breaking point. Maya called 2 weeks before to tea. Elmi, she and her boyfriend, Liam, would be spending Christmas Eve and Christmas morning with her dad and Sandra. And could we maybe do something the week between Christmas and New Year's? She said it so breezily, so reasonably, that for a moment I almost convinced myself it was fine. Of course, I said, whatever works for you, honey. I hung up, walked to my bedroom, sat on the edge of my bed, and felt something inside me go very, very still. Christmas morning, alone. Tyler had his own family now, a wife, a 2-year-old daughter, and they lived in Seattle. He called. He always called. But it wasn't the same as being together. I made a small breakfast, sat by the tree I decorated more out of habit than joy, and I thought about how many Christmas mornings I had given everything I had to make magical. The handmade stockings, the hidden gifts, the special breakfast casserole with the crescent rolls pressed into the shape of a star. I sat there and thought about all of it. And for the first time, I let myself ask the question I'd been avoiding for years. At what point did I stop mattering? January came, cold and clear and unforgiving the way Ohio January always is. Maya came for a belated Christmas visit the first weekend of the month. She was warm and lovely, she always is. She brought good wine and fancy chocolates, and she sat at my kitchen counter while I cooked the same way she used to as a little girl. We laughed a lot. It was genuinely nice. And then, somewhere near the end of the evening, after the wine had made us both a little softer, she started talking about Sandra. About how Sandra had helped her navigate some conflict at her job. About how Sandra had taken her to a spa day when she was stressed. About how Sandra had this remarkable ability to always say the right thing. I listened, I smiled, I nodded. And then she said it, the thing she'd said on the phone back in October. She said it again, differently, but it was the same truth underneath. She's really become like a second mom to me, you know? Like a different kind of mom. The kind who, I don't know, who pushed me to think bigger, I guess. She wasn't saying I hadn't pushed her. She wasn't meaning to diminish anything. I know that. I know my daughter's heart, and cruelty isn't in it. But something in me finally spoke, quietly but firmly. Can I tell you something, Maya? I said. I kept my voice very calm, very even. Not to be unkind to Sandra, but I need you to know something. She looked up. Something in my tone caught her. I was there, sweetheart. I was there for all of it. I was there when you had ear infections at 3 a.m, and the only thing that helped was me walking you around the living room in the dark. I was there when you didn't get into your first choice school and you cried for a week straight. I was there when you had your heart broken for the first time and you called me from a parking lot and I drove 45 minutes to sit with you in your car. I was there, baby. I've always been there. A silence. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something shift behind her eyes. Mom, she said softly, I know. I just need you to know that I know, I said. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not competing with Sandra. I needed to say that out loud, that I was there, that I gave you everything I had. Her eyes filled, mine did too. "You did," she whispered. "Mom, you did, I know that." We sat there in the kitchen, two women who loved each other and were just beginning to understand how much had gone unsaid between them. It wasn't a resolution. It wasn't a clean Hollywood moment where everything got fixed. It was just real, honest, a beginning. After she left, I did something I hadn't done in a very long time. I sat down in the middle of the living room floor, back against the couch, and I let myself cry properly. Not the careful, contained kind, the kind where your whole body participates, where it comes from somewhere so deep inside you that by the time it's over you feel scraped out and clean at the same time. Biscuit came and pressed his big warm head into my lap, and I held on to him and I cried for a long time. I cried for the 22-year marriage that had quietly run out of road. I cried for the Christmas mornings and the birthday cakes and the decade of Saturdays and the invisible labor of being the primary, consistent, always their parent. I cried for the version of myself that had shrunk and shrunk, trying to take up less space, trying not to want too much, trying to be grateful and generous and good. I cried for the little girl in me who had just needed her daughter to see her. And then, slowly, the way winter light grows slowly but surely toward spring, the crying eased. And in the silence that came after, something else arrived. Not bitterness, not anger. Clarity. I thought I spent 25 years giving everything tea. Oh, other people's needs. 22 years trying to hold a marriage together that was quietly, gently dying. Years after that trying to be so accommodating, so undamaging, so easy that I could somehow remain indispensable by never asking for anything. And somewhere in all that effort to be everything to everyone, I had stopped being anything to myself. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Real things rarely do. It happened the way gardens happen, with small, daily, unglamorous decisions that only reveal themselves as progress when you look back over months. I started waking up early and sitting with my coffee by the window before anything else, before my phone, before the news, before the day could rush in and fill up all the space. Just me and the light and Biscuit dozing nearby. 15 minutes, then 20, then half an hour, just learning to be quiet inside my own life. I started painting again. I'd been a painter in my 20s, before children and marriage and the busy machinery of building a life had filed it away as a luxury I couldn't justify. I bought a small set of watercolors at the art supply store downtown, set up at the kitchen table on Sunday mornings, and painted badly for a while. Freely, without caring if it was good. It was such a relief. To do something just for me, to make something imperfect and love it anyway. I signed up for a literature course at the local community center, Great American Novels, 8 weeks, 12 people seated around folding tables drinking bad coffee, talking about Steinbeck and Morrison and Baldwin. I'd been a reader my whole life, but I'd never talked about books in a room full of people, and it turned out to be one of the more nourishing things I had done in years. I started saying no to things that drained me, and yes to things that filled me up. This sounds simple. It wasn't. Every no felt like a small act of rebellion against the woman I had trained myself to be, endlessly accommodating, endlessly available, endlessly last. But slowly, the voice that said you don't deserve to come first grew quieter, and another voice grew stronger, steadier. The voice that said, I am still here, I still matter. My life is still happening and it still belongs to me. Spring came early that year, the kind of March that makes you believe again. I planted more than I ever had in the garden, tomatoes and peppers and sunflowers, and a whole row of lavender I'd been meaning to plant for 3 years. I got dirt under my fingernails and I didn't worry about it. I crouched in the cool morning earth while Biscuit sniffed around the fence, and I thought about growth, real growth, the kind that requires being buried first. I called Tyler more, not needy calls, not sad calls, just regular human calls. He started calling back more too, and one afternoon he said, Mom, you seem different. Good, different. What's going on? And I laughed and said I was learning some things late in life, and he said, well, better late. And we laughed together across the miles between Ohio and Seattle, and it felt like something real. Maya and I began something new too, tentative at first. She started texting more little things, a funny photo, a question about a recipe, a voice memo when she was driving home from work and thinking about me. The conversations were lighter, but underneath them ran something deeper, an honesty we hadn't had before my kitchen table night. She came to visit again in April, just her, no occasion. We planted sunflower seeds together in the garden, pressing them into the soil one by one. She talked about her relationship with Liam, about her ambitions at work, about fears she'd never said out loud before. And I talked, too, about the painting, about the books, about the way something in me had been quietly asleep for years and was waking up now. She looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. "Mom," she said, "I feel like I'm meeting you for the first time, the real you." I reached over and squeezed her hand, there in the garden, with dirt on both our knees. "Maybe you are," I said. "Maybe I am too. I've been thinking, lately, about what it means to give yourself to someone completely. Mothers do this. It's built into the architecture of the role. You pour yourself out, your time, your energy, your worry, your hope, your entire inner weather, into these small people who need everything and can give back very little for a very long time. And then, slowly, they grow. And the giving shifts. And if you're lucky, if you've done some version of it right, they grow into people who can love you back not because they need you, but because they choose you. That's the goal. That was always the goal. But somewhere in my years of giving, I had forgotten to keep something for myself, a reserve, a self that existed independently of being needed. And so when the needing changed, when my children grew into their own full lives and found other people who shaped and helped and loved them, I felt emptied out, used up, left behind. What I know now is this: your children's love for other people in their lives does not diminish your place in their story. Sandra did not erase me. She added to my daughter's life, and my daughter's life is bigger and richer for having multiple people who love her well. That is a good thing. I can hold that as a good thing. But I also know now that I should never have made myself so small. That the love I have for my children, for my life, for my own strange and beautiful self, is not a thing to be doled out until nothing remains. It is a thing to be replenished, tended, protected. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Everyone has heard that. But the more true thing, the harder thing, is this: you don't have to empty the cup in the first place. You are allowed to keep some for yourself. It's November now, a year since that October phone call. The light through the kitchen window is sideways again, but it doesn't feel the same way it did then. My sunflowers grew tall all summer, taller than I expected, and when they dried, I saved the seeds in little paper envelopes to plant again next year. My watercolor paintings cover the wall above my desk, crooked and imperfect and mine. I finished 3 novels in the literature course and signed up for another 8 weeks. Biscuit is older and slower, but still follows me room to room, still presses his head into my lap when I sit on the floor. I am grateful for him every single day. Maya and I talk twice a week now, real conversations. She told me last month that she's thinking about couples therapy with Liam, working through some things, being intentional. I told her I was proud of her for taking love seriously. She told me she learned that from me. I held the phone tightly and looked out the window at the bare branches and the sideways light, and I let that land. I let myself receive it. She learned that from me. There it was, the thing I had given her that she now carried so deeply inside herself she almost didn't know where it came from. The invisible work, risen to the surface, seen. That Tuesday phone call a year ago, the one where she thanked Sandra for the life Sandra had given her, I have thought about it so many times. And I understand now what I couldn't understand then. Maya wasn't erasing me. She was telling me, in the only language she had at the time, that she was loved and shaped by many hands, that her life was full of people who had invested in her. And my hands, my 25 years of early mornings and middle-of-the-night vigils and chocolate chip pancakes and swimming lessons and driving 45 minutes to sit in parking lots, my hands were the first ones, the foundation ones, the ones she stood on to reach everything else. You can give someone a gold bracelet. You cannot give someone their own foundation. That was mine. That was always mine. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself somewhere in my story, maybe you're a mother who feels invisible, or a woman who has given and can't quite remember when she stopped filling herself back up. I want to say something to you directly. You are not invisible. The work you have done, all of it, the seen and the unseen, it lives inside the people you love. They carry it without knowing. It is in the way your daughter takes love seriously, in the way your son shows up for his own children, in the values and the warmth and the quiet strength that you pressed into them so carefully over all those years. They are made of you, even when they don't say so, even when they don't know it yet. And you are still here, still whole, still worthy of the life you want. Not the life around your children, not the life of waiting and accommodating and being grateful for the scraps of attention, the life you want. The painting on Sunday mornings, the garden with the lavender, the books and the walks and the friendships and the quiet cup of coffee by the window before the day begins. Start there, start small, start today. Your story is not over. It is, maybe, just beginning to be honest. I'm Diane, and I am still learning. But I am learning in the light now instead of in the silence. If any part of this story touched something in you, I hope you'll stay a while. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have a story of your own, about the invisible work, about being seen or not seen, about finding yourself again on the other side of loss, leave it in the comments. I read them all. Because the most important thing I have learned, in 61 years of living, is this. We heal by being witnessed, and we witness each other by sharing the truth. Thank you for being here with me tonight.